We are recording. Awesome. So the first question, I'm sorry, my computer's, like I said, going slow, so it's still pulling up.
You know what? The first question was just briefly summarize
Just to summarize it, yeah?
Yeah.
Okay. So briefly summarize the case.
I typed this all out yesterday. Do you guys want me to just read what I have, or I tried to make it brief as I could. So, okay, I said Peter and Jeanette were married in 1960. They had both come from difficult home circumstances. Early in their marriage, they began to suffer more difficult trials, such as losing their baby Philip. There were many miscommunications during this time that led Peter and Jeanette to misunderstand each other. As life went on, they had more children. Twins were born early with a few complications. However, they survived. Life seemed mundane, and there didn't seem to be a whole lot of communication among the family. A few years later, Jerry, a twin, became ill and was also put onto life support. The family held a council of whether they should take him off the machines. It was decided that they would take him off to help Peter's grandmother. She died shortly after Jerry. After the death of Jerry, the family seemed to come together. They did not argue like they did before. Jerry's brother and sister both dreamed about Jerry, and they knew all things were okay with him, and it would be okay for the family. That's a really that was really brief, but does that kind of remind you of some of the?
Yeah, I feel like that was really good. Did it say in the case study? I don't remember if it said specifically like the word mundane, because like with the summary, we need to make sure to not like. I just don't remember. I just know that like with summaries, you have to make sure not to like put in your own personal like feelings towards the case. Like you couldn't say, oh, their life was really boring, because how do you know it was really boring? So I don't think she's gonna be that particular, but that's the only thing I could think of.
Yeah.
But I thought that was really good. So do we have anything that we want to add to it?
And you know what? I could send, you know what, Kayla, I can copy and I can send this to you, what I wrote.
That'd be great.
Yeah. And then, you can add to it and whatever. Again, I feel like
I'll go through it and I'll make sure that consensus is reached on. So I'll take all of our opinions and I'll just make sure that it's edited to the way that we believe it should be. Is that all right?
Absolutely. Because I do feel like the summary, because when I write a summary, I feel like it should be, the instructor already knows the story. So I was just trying to touch on the briefest points the points that,
I thought it sounded good, and I'm not thinking
a lot. But you don't have to use it at all, I promise. But I will send it to you.
Hey, it saves me of typing what I hear, right?
Yeah.
Cool. Anybody else have anything that they want to add into the summary, that they want to change, or that they want me to look at?
I mean, if you want to add more details, I don't know. I don't think it should be totally long, but I agree that we probably, I'm just trying to keep it more on the, I don't know how to say it, not on the
professional.
The professional side.
Like factual.
Yes.
One thing that we could mention if we did want to add a little bit more detail was that Janet already had a child when they were married.
That's right.
And that there was the miscommunication about when Philip died. Like Peter wasn't there when Philip died, and the next day when he got back, Janet was trying to like arrange the funeral, and Peter was like, he's not dead yet, why are you doing this? And so there was that miscommunication there, and I feel like that led to the miscommunications later.
Definitely. Okay.
So I think that could be important to add in there as well.
All right, I'll make sure to do that.
I'm reading through and making sure that's everything I wanted.
Did anybody else, when reading it, just think, this poor family? Oh, there's one. Oh, another one? Like,
Yeah.
Crap.
I cried. I read it twice.
I definitely teared up, and I was like, oh my gosh, I'm freaking crying over like a case study, but it's so sad.
I'm glad I'm not the only one, but I mean, I'm also somebody who cries through The Greatest Showman, so I mean, you know, I'm a tearer.
Okay. Yeah, I think that that's pretty much everything that I wanted to say. Just, yeah, you talked about the family council, which is the other thing I really wanted to point on, is that the family came together to make that decision, and that helped to bring them together.
Yeah.
Okay, perfect. So the next question says, list any principles or concepts from the course that can be applied in offering help or direction for this family. So did anyone have anything to say about that?
You know, I'm so sorry. Again, I could read what I have if you want. But I don't want to take up anybody else's time. So
did anyone else have anything?
Okay, I'll go ahead and tell you what I have, okay? So I said, I think in many cases the ABCX model could have been applied in most of the situations. An example of that would have been in the beginning when the loss of their first child, Philip, with Philip. I think if they could have identified the problem or the actual event together, this would have been very helpful. Again, you know, like there was miscommunication there. And then Jeanette seemed to have identified a resource that could help her, which was her mother. Do you guys remember that?
She leaned on her mom a lot. Yeah.
She leaned on her mom. But I wonder if Peter could have found more to help him. There was definitely cognitions going on where they were thinking about each other's responses. And again, there was miscommunication. And finally, X, the total experience. What could they have learned from the experience that could have helped them? And then the other thing that I put down was, okay, so we've been doing those daily mood logs. And they may have been able to see how they could have changed their perspective on the way they were thinking about everything that happened to them through all those years. And maybe that could have helped them throughout their whole life story. So they basically, the ABCX model and then the mood logs is what I came up with. So
adding in, I think some good family councils would do them all really good. It looks like we got a lot of nodding heads, so
yeah.
I'm not the only one.
The other theory that I thought of was like the family systems theory, and talking about how like the family is like connected, and like it's not plasticity, is it? The flexibility, the how tight knit they are, and that kind of stuff. Because at the very beginning, like they were a new couple, they were really tight, and then this event happened, and it kind of separated them a little bit, and the system was kind of broken up. And then as they had more kids, the system kind of came back together, but it wasn't what it should have been, what it could have been, and they weren't as tight as they should have been. The communication had problems, and then after the last one, they came together and they were a really tight family. They relied on each other. There was leadership. There was a family that was actually together. So I think the family systems theory has a lot to do with it as well.
Definitely.
And then I also thought of the Gottman repair checklist kind of a thing, because the part that stood out to me a little bit was where she was expressing to her husband how she was feeling, but he took it in a way of, oh, I got to work more. I don't know if you guys saw that part. But I was like, oh, they're miscommunicating right there, because that's not what she wants or means. And so I thought, so when you look at Gottman in his list, he says, I feel, and then you think about, sorry for what the actions are. I appreciate, I want you to stop this, or I need you to stop this, and why you're feeling that way. Am I making sense? I'm kind of all over the place.
Yeah. I think with the Gottman theory, or you know what, one thing that I take away from that is that we're trying to recognize each other's wishes I think that's what we're saying. That was one thing that's really important. And I do remember that part. He started to work more so he could provide more, but it wasn't what she needed. So that's really good. I didn't even go that far.
Yeah, it kind of reminds me now, because oftentimes I expect my husband to do things and know it, but it turns out I actually have to talk and explain it.
Yeah.
When you have to say what your expectations are, it's kind of a little harder, I think. I mean, I've tried it with my own husband, and then I hear myself, I'm like, I sound silly. I'm like, I expect you to just love me right now. Don't talk. Don't look at me. Just love me. And it's like, oh, how could I love me right now? So.
I can relate.
I think that that's important, because it does talk about their background and how they came from difficult home circumstances, and neither of them had examples on how to problem solve. So they didn't know any better. They didn't know how to communicate or how to be able to express what they were feeling. So I think the Gottman, I agree with that. That would have really helped out being able to avoid any miscommunications.
Yeah.
Definitely. Anything else, or can we move on? Or
I think that's good.
Yeah.
Cool.
Awesome. The next question is, list relevant risks / dangers for the family and its members face.
Okay, so then again, I wrote, I see the parents struggling in their relationship. There seems to be no communication between the couple. Divorce came to my mind because, I kind of related it to just personal, not my personal experience, but in fact, I have a brother and sister-in-law going through a divorce over a death of a child right now. That actually came to my mind. That's why. As for the children, I see problems of depression and miscommunication because of their parents' behavior. And there was no camaraderie with the kids because they would fight, and they were like, it was just no camaraderie among the family and the kids. And the potential I could see is that the kids could grow apart from each other, which would lead into adulthood. And so those are just some of the things that I felt like could possibly happen.
Yeah, I think something that came to my mind is with a family, the most traumatic experience a family can go through is the death of a child, even more than a death of a spouse. And so, Sarah just texted. She doesn't see the link. Anyway, so I think the potential dangers I see with that is actually a whole remapping of the family in a negative way. I could see roles going more negative as far as children taking on responsibility for what had happened as well. So I can kind of see that route if they're not careful to create better channels of communication and letting those emotions out of what they're feeling and what they're doing. But
yeah, I like what you said. In the case, like near the beginning, it talks about how the couples weren't familiar with how parents or couples respond to one another. They didn't grow up in a loving family, and so they had to learn for themselves. And so I think if they keep taking this route, which I'm going to just assume it's probably similar to their parents, they're going to end up with children feeling the same way they did at the beginning.
Yeah, I agree with that. I kind of thought about like the children's lives and how, like, if they have the example that their parents are showing them that they're going to have similar relationships when they get married. And so I saw that as kind of a risk of, if they don't change it now and show a good example, that their kids could have problems too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I definitely agree.
Another thing that I thought of that's not really like as much at the end of the case as it was at the very beginning is I know couples that when they lose a baby, they don't want to go through that again, so they don't have more kids. So in this case, like they could have had the child from another marriage, Jennifer, and then never had more kids after the loss of Philip because it just like broke their hearts, and then they wouldn't have had the family that they had at the very end.
Definitely.
So can I just chime in there, you guys? I actually lost my baby as an infant. And so I can relate to that. And you know, it was very difficult. In fact, the next baby that I had after that, I spent months in the hospital. I spent almost 5 months in the hospital, and he was still born premature. And by the time I got to my third baby, I was in my head, I was kind of done. I was like, so I do think, yeah, it's such an emotional thing. That baby that passed away, you guys, I'm really old. Okay. So that baby would be turning 29 years old in a month. And so, you know, I know that time heals and all of that, but just want to, yeah, I can see how people can come to that, you know, that can lead them to that conclusion of not wanting to do it again. Or so I just wanted to share that with you.
Well, I can even see that as far as even having a miscarriage. I mean, you know, I think that losing any child or even the prospect of having one out on the earth is something very emotional. And thank you, Cindy, for sharing that. I know that's probably difficult to share.
Oh, you know, it's okay. I'm, you know, it's been a long time. I'm still trying to text Sarah.
But
yeah, but anyway.
But I get that. I mean, I actually had a miscarriage this week, and so I get that. And I don't feel like I want any more kids. It's hard, but I get it. I mean, it's something I need to try again because I already have one beautiful boy, but that loss, it hurts so bad.
It's a terrible loss. Sorry.
It's okay. It's okay. It was really early, so not worried.
I think that was a risk that I saw because I had a miscarriage too before my first. And I remember how I closed myself off. So I distanced myself from my husband for a while. And I saw how Janet, instead of turning to her husband, she turned to her mom. And I thought that was a really big risk in that marriage, not turning to your husband for that support, because then, you know, that drift just gets bigger and bigger and bigger to the point where you don't know that person anymore. You're just sort of like roommates, you know? And I think sometimes that can lead to divorce because you don't have that emotional connection with your husband anymore. And then your kids grow up and they see that, and they even mention how the oldest was scared that the family wasn't going to make it because losing anybody and a child, it's really big. It's life-changing.
It is life-changing. In fact, I think I mentioned my nephew committed suicide about 2 years ago. And my brother-in-law at this time, my sister-in-law has just gone. She's cut the family off. She's cut her own family off. She can't cope. In fact, my brother-in-law just told my husband this week that he's most likely going to submit divorce papers because she can't cope and he can't cope with her anymore. So it's very, very real. Oh, Sarah, is she there?
Sarah, yay.
Hi. Yay.
Yay, sorry. I'm in a hotel room and anyway, long story short, I'm sorry and I'm grateful I got to come on. Thank you.
Oh, no worries, Sarah. I'm glad we got you. I was worried about that.
Thank you.
Okay. So we just finished the second question.
The third question, you mean?
Yeah, the third question. Sorry. The relevant dangers in the family. Do you have anything to add to that, Sarah? Or do you want us to move on to the next question and you can gather everything?
Yeah, do you mind?
Oh, yeah, not a problem. So the next question says, list relevant opportunities presented to this family as a result of this crisis. I think a big opportunity was the opportunity to have a family. Like after the first crisis and even with the last crisis, like it made them a family. Before that, they were kind of like what you guys said. They were all just roommates. They argued. They weren't connected. And like through these crises, it brought them together.
Definitely. It strengthened their cohesion and their flexibility, I think, towards each other.
Yeah.
I think, oh, go ahead. Keep going.
It helped them appreciate each other, with Peter saying that you don't know how, like, life is fleeting, and he didn't know how long he would be able to, or he would have his children. So it just made them value each other more and appreciate the moments instead of seeing all the negative stuff. He started focusing on the fact that he still had all his other children.
Mm-hmm. So I was thinking that because it said list relevant opportunities. So I guess I was thinking what other things they could have done. And just because of my own situation with the loss of my child, I was thinking during the loss of their first child, I think it was time for them to reflect maybe on their testimonies and how, and truly try to understand what they actually believed in. What the core beliefs were, and then because I just reflected because of my own loss, and then others have shared their loss. Is what I said, having lost a child of my own, this was such a great blessing to me and my husband. We were able to count the blessings of having our child with us for a little while, even if it was for a very short time, and we were grateful to know the plan of happiness, which helped us cope after he died. And so I just wonder if I guess what I'm saying was, could they have thought about where they were in their testimonies, or how God could have helped them, or, that kind of.
Definitely. I like that suggestion. I know that with me this week, I definitely turned to my husband during this time. I mean, I was almost there, getting myself trapped up, getting ready, and then I realized what I was doing. And by the way, I did one of those daily mood logs on that, caught myself, and I forced myself to be with him and to be close to him. And it was a good opportunity to talk to him, because he actually brought up Heavenly Father, and he's like, I think you need to go talk to him as well. And it was a good moment for me.
Yeah.
Oh, sweet.
Yeah, definitely. I felt very proud of myself, catching myself like mid-depressing thought. I was like, yes.
Sometimes these assignments do pay off at the end.
Yeah. Does anybody else have any relevant opportunities or yeah, I didn't write down the other one.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
You guys covered mine, so I agree.
I don't know. Sorry, I joined the conversation late, but
so we have it recorded for you, Sarah.
Oh, okay. Are we on less relevant opportunities presented to this family?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. And you may have already said this, so I'm sorry if I'm repeating it, but when their son was on the verge of death, Jerry, the family had an opportunity to share his life support resources. You guys spoke about that already?
Yeah.
Oh, that's a good one.
Yeah. And it was interesting because that actually turned out to be his grandmother.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. That was a huge opportunity. I didn't even think of that.
Yeah, so that's what I wrote down too.
Going on with other things that could have been done, I also think after the first child, that would have been a good time for a family council.
Mm-hmm.
I'm all on that boat right now.
Yeah.
I definitely agree. Okay. Are we moving on?
Yes.
Okay, so the next one says note important relationship considerations. And I feel like we've discussed this a lot, but let's, I guess, reiterate for the question so that when we do our summary, we can have it there.
Yeah, mine's pretty really simple. But I'll just say what I wrote. I put important relationship considerations would be husband and wife relationship, father and children relationship, wife and children relationship, family relationship, and then sibling relationship.
Yeah, that's what I had too.
That's what I
relationships.
I put first and foremost their marriage, though. I did, because I feel like the marriage and then their children. Yeah, I just feel like marriage is the number one go-to
foundation.
Yes, it's if the marriage isn't there or it's not good, then it's very difficult to carry on a cohesive relationship with the children all together. That's what I think. But
I completely agree with you. I can't remember which class it is, but one of my classes we were talking about how children respond to what they see their parents doing. So if parents are arguing in front of them, the children can develop depression and get anxious and stressed out because of what mom and dad are doing.
And children can also develop those tendencies to argue. I mean, look at any child in a car who's yelling at the other cars. I mean, you can even look at my own. He's not even 2 yet, and because of what he's seen, he now yells in the other cars, "Go cars!" But so yeah, I like what you said. That is a big possibility to develop all of those, and plus unneeded habits and thought processes.
Yeah, and I agree with you too that the wife-husband relationship was the most important. And I also noted that Peter and Jeanette, they worked really hard to make this relationship last.
They did.
Because they were really young when they got married, and they both didn't come from great families, so I don't think they had really good examples. So they kind of had to create something, and they I think they had many chances to call it quits.
Yeah.
They had many experiences that drew them apart that most people would have split up for it. Like when they lost their first son Philip, that took them apart, but they didn't get a divorce. They were trying hard for the family, but not really towards each other. And so each crisis kind of brought them farther apart until the last one brought them back together. But it did show their dedication to the family, but not really to their marriage, which I think is the difference between a healthy family and a healthy marriage relationship. That a healthy marriage, you're fighting for each other, and your family kind of comes along with that. Whereas with them, they were just working for their family.
That is such an interesting point.
I like that.
Yeah, I do too, because there are many families who I know of people who stay together because of the kids, but not because of each other.
And that's, I've read somewhere that that's actually more damaging sometimes, is when a couple is only together because of the kids, mainly for the aspect of their fighting, and it goes back to the kids developing anxiety, depression, And so I find that very interesting that their kids didn't develop that, even though it sounds like they did stay together just for the family.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think because it says that they really loved each other. So I think they were both working hard. They just didn't know how to work together. So they were doing their best because Peter did everything he could to provide for the family. And then Jeanette was doing everything she could to take care of the children. So they were both working equally hard. They just didn't know how to do it together as one unit.
Yeah, they didn't have the tools to communicate.
Mm-hmm.
Right. But I give them so much credit, with the little resources that they had and the little knowledge that they had.
Definitely. Anybody else have anything to add on?
Sweet. Next question is recommend coping strategies. The biggest one that I would recommend would be counseling, like couple counseling, specific marriage to counseling for the two of them, grief counseling over the loss of their babies and their kids, and family counseling. That's a lot of individual things, but they each have like such important aspects.
And you know, I think like we talked about a lot of, I mean, like there's a lot of strategies like we talked about the individual, like we could have done the ABC, X, Y, the family councils, counseling, the family systems theory. There's all that, but I also think too that you know what. Again, I think you know they could have even had ecclesiastical help in counseling. You know, maybe through the resources of you know the bishop or Relief Society president or anything like that that might have been able to help them even from the very beginning. You know, and so I think we've talked a lot about a lot of different resources. There's a lot that could help.
I don't know if it's only me that I feel this way, but I feel like as members of the church, sometimes it is really embarrassing to go and ask for help. To say that, you know, oh, we have the same problems as somebody who's not LDS, you know? And so I actually wonder a lot of times, like how many I mean, I've had trials in my life where I've wanted to ask for help, but I didn't because I don't know, maybe it's pride, maybe it's just, oh, you know, I don't want to talk to my leaders about it or whatnot. And it's, you know, I'm just talking about things that I went through, you know, sometimes like with my marriage or with my kids. And so I wonder like how many people actually utilize what the church has to offer, because the church has a lot to offer.
It does, and you bring up a really good point. And just from, and Sarah, you weren't here at the beginning when everybody's kind of talked about their own little losses or whatever, but I will tell you guys, when I lost my son, I didn't tell anyone in my board for 3 weeks. No one even knew. I couldn't talk about it, and I lived in Provo where my husband was going to school, and it wasn't. I was outside getting my mail, and there was where the apartment complex where I lived in, ladies that had a couple kids, and they thought I was still pregnant because I had my baby around 22 weeks. He lived for about 8 minutes. When they came and asked me if I was still, how I was feeling and how the pregnancy was going, and then I was forced to tell them that I had already lost the baby. That night, I had the bishopric over, I had the Relief Society presidency over, and I was so grateful. It is, there's a thing, you know, there's sadness, there's pride, there's all of that emotions you go through, but those resources, there's immense amount of resources from the church that there's blessings that can be given, both temporal and physically blessings can be given. So, and help. It's just,
thank you for sharing.
I like that. Some coping strategies I thought of was emotional awareness, writing down a mood log why we're feeling the way we are, expressing our feelings in a journal. I also thought about mindfulness, which is meditation, relaxing, breathing exercise, and then even distractions. I know sometimes we want to sit and we just think about the worst things that have happened to us, but if they can turn their minds to like an uplifting, positive movie or music, or find something to do as a family, it can take their mind off of those negative feelings and thoughts they may be having at that time.
Definitely. I like the distractions.
Yeah, me too.
Those are good distractions.
It's a big thing. Just recently, I was reading a study, and they were studying grief and how it is. And they were saying, imagine your life as a huge circle. And when you lose somebody, you can just color that circle black. And originally what the thought was is that as time passed, the black would just recess into one part. But what they found is that the black or the pain stayed the same, but the circle got bigger. And I think that is through a lot of what we are suggesting of distractions, mindfulness, mood logs, counseling, and everything, and even support systems.
And then we're also counseled to, in order to forget our own burdens, we can serve, right?
Yes, good one.
And so I think the church has the Just Serve website, that they can probably recommend, or some kind of service project in the ward or the community that they can help with.
Definitely. That's a good one.
I added family council to my list because I thought about the little kids and how they might not know how to express their feelings, or so that they can have a safe place to be able to talk about their brother and just have that more unity with the family. So I thought a family council, so that way they know that mom and dad are still having a hard time, so it's okay if they have a hard time. Just making it more normal and a part of their family.
Definitely.
Yeah, that's a good one.
Definitely. Anybody else?
You guys touched on everything I had.
Okay. So the next question is recommendation to supported/involved parties.
Some of the ideas I had were like extended family could like lend support, and I feel like at least in the study, or the case study, it had mentioned like the mom helping out a lot, and so I thought that was a great way to get involved with them. And then I also thought of like church like members helping out, and I liked what you guys had said about the church has lots of support for many different crises.
I like touching on what Sarah said about not being prideful. It's okay to ask for help. Like when they lost a child, their ward could have supported them, and I'm sure that they did, like providing food or childcare for their other kids. Like providing that support is huge. But my mom is the Relief Society president, so she tells me, she's like, well, we have a sister in the ward that's suffering, but she won't accept any help. And I'm like, well, why not? Like, we can help her. We can go clean her house. We can go do something to help her. And it's like, we just have to make sure to be humble enough to accept the help when it is offered. And that's not asking for help. That's not saying, oh, we're so needy. That's not being needy. It's accepting the help and allowing others to serve you.
Yeah. I think that's a good point, because I sometimes like want to serve people, but they don't want to let me serve them. And so like that's kind of hard, because I feel like a lot of us do want to serve, but we don't really get the opportunities to. And so that's been hard for me, because sometimes I don't want to be served either. And so I've kind of tried to let people like serve me, like my visiting teachers, like they really want to help out, and I know how that feels to want to serve. So I kind of have to like step back and say it's okay for someone to help me out when I'm having a hard time.
Definitely. Something else I was thinking about, I think that school counselors with the kids, if they could kind of outreach to those kids and let them have some good discussions with somebody who's just neutral, so they can vent and they can get it all out there about, either positive feelings, negative feelings, whatever they have.
I put like, of course I put down like family councils, and family council would always be good. But I also think I put down that they need some regular fun activities to do. Like, I think we're talking about distractions, but I think the family needs to get out and do something fun together. And, whether it's just as going to the park, or something like that. And I think really importantly too was that they should always remember, and I know I keep bringing it back to church things, but I think family prayer is really important. And remembering all of the good things that are going on in their life, and to be thankful for all of the, be thankful for the things that they already have. I mean, they're already together. They're, this family, and that they love. So I think that was one thing, that to remember what they have and to be grateful for it, and to remember to have family prayer and
all the basics, huh?
Yeah.
Yeah.
My answers were kind of towards the supporting parties instead of the involved. Something I wrote was stay in contact. I'm sure I've never been in some situation similar to this, but I'm sure I wouldn't want to talk to anyone. And I think even whether it's a text, an email, a phone call, or a visit, just staying connected, reminding them that people are thinking of them would be good. Also, if somebody's experienced the same situation, maybe remind them that it's survivable, that they'll be able to get through it.
You know,
listen to them and how they're feeling.
I like what you're saying, Emily, because you know what, it actually brings a thought to my mind. This is what like the whole new for the supporting. This is like what ministering is all about. And
absolutely
listening, the calling. I mean, letting them talk, not you talk, and really getting to know. So, thank you for sharing that, because that brings me to that thought of the church trying to have us be better ministers among each other.
That's what I was thinking.
I also thought about the supporting parties. I know when I had my miscarriage, it would have been nice to be able to talk to somebody about it, but all my family members kind of avoided it because it's uncomfortable and they don't know what to say. So I think in a situation like that, when maybe you haven't went through the same thing, you don't know what to say. So you don't know how to talk to them. And just let them know that it's okay if they're going to be sad, or it's okay if they want to talk about their son or their brother because they probably miss them. And so just let the extended family or friends know that sometimes they are going to want to talk about it and not get so awkward when they do want to do that.
Definitely.
I remember going through a really rough patch. And I had a friend who texted me. She didn't call me. She just texted me and she said, I just want you to know that I'm here. And she said, I want you to know that you can just call me anytime during the day or night. And she said, you can just call me to let me hear you cry. You don't even have to say a word. And so just knowing that, you know, like you said, sometimes it's hard to talk. You don't want to talk, but just to know that somebody is there and willing to do that for you, it makes all the difference in the world, you know? So thank you for sharing that. So important.
Definitely. I like all these suggestions. I'm writing them down. I'm like, I feel like I should frame this.
And I don't know if it's because we're like supposed to be like strong women of faith, and but you know, you're right. When we go through a lot of things, we usually don't want to talk about it. We don't want to openly admit, you know, hey, somebody come and do my dishes, you know, or come cook for us. We're a family of 7, you know.
You know what? It makes me think, going back to the family, it makes me think, you know, maybe, yeah, sometimes we're embarrassed by all the things that happen to us, and we get, you know, and we just don't want to burden anyone else.
Right. I think that's what it is. Yeah.
Definitely.
Yeah. And so maybe that's it. It's not that we're prideful. Maybe we just don't want to burden, and we don't, you know.
Maybe it's you don't want everybody else to feel the pain that you feel with it, and you feel like letting them in would be subjecting them to that same emotional pit of despair, and you would try to save anybody from that. But in reality, that's kind of what you need to pull yourself out of it. I mean, I know for me, in my experience, my miscarriage, I mean, it wasn't far along at all. I mean, it was 4 weeks along. That's how I hadn't told anybody, you know, and so I can see how hard it would be, you know, if nobody knows, then it's hard to just say, hey, yeah, I had this, you know, but I mean, people even wonder if it's a baby, but yeah, I don't know. See, so I can kind of understand why people won't talk about it, because I mean, it's like, even myself, it's like not only me and my husband knew, and so it's, it'd be hard to outreach, but I think it is so important.
Yeah, because it's important to you, and so we keep all those feelings bottled up because we don't know what somebody else is going to think or how to bring it up, but it's still something that if you feel like you have to share so you can get past it, you should be able to have that outlet and have somebody you can turn to be able to do that.
Definitely. And so I guess you guys are the first people to know about this, so thank you for letting me express those feelings to you. It's healing. Thank you.
I wish I could give you a hug right now.
Oh yeah?
Air hug.
I feel it.
And it's okay to be sad because it's sad.
No. Don't get in there, okay?
I know.
It's okay.
I'm not leaving.
I know. I just don't like crying in front of people. That's like my kryptonite.
Yeah, but you look so pretty.
Thanks. Thank you, guys. But it's nice to know that I'm not the only one. It's nice to hear other people's stories and to know, like, oh, okay, it's okay. I'm not broken.
You actually bring up a really good point, I think, is once we do tell others, then it's amazing how many people can relate to the circumstances that you are in. And it's amazing. That's happened to me so many times where I did something and then all of a sudden there's people there. And you know what? People who have gone through it before, and they actually can know how to handle it, and it's okay to be, some of us have been there. You can be sad, but you can also know it's going to be okay.
Definitely. I think that's the biggest thing for me is, like, I see, I hear your guys' experiences, and it's like, oh, it's not the end of the world. It's okay. Because I have knowledge of a plan of salvation, a loving Heavenly Father, and, I have all of those basic foundations of a testimony, I know that it's going to be okay, and through your guys' experiences. So it's kind of cool, and I can see how this family would definitely get so much closure, even from other families who maybe have lost a child. I mean, because even just the closure I feel, I know it would heal their family even more.
Right. We don't know it, but we have so much to offer each other.
Definitely.
We really do. I mean, we are children of God. We come from a really great lineage. Why wouldn't we?
Definitely. Yeah. But I'm very appreciative. Thank you guys for all of your recommendations and support and your words of wisdom throughout all of this.
Should we go to the last one?
We should. Otherwise, it's going to turn into a ice cream and crying fest of me.
The last one just asks for additional resources we might provide or suggest.
Here you go.
Ice cream.
Definitely.
That's what I put church leaders on this one. And then also, I don't know, when I think of resources, I think of websites. Here, I'll post the resource because I thought it was so interesting. I'll put it in the chat. But it's a therapist place here in Utah that goes through everything, whether it's a family crisis, loss of a child, eating disorders, depression. And I thought it was really informative. And I was like, if I was like a therapist or someone trying to reach out, I would recommend that they'd go to this website. If you guys want to look at it, it's right there if you have time later.
Okay, cool. Well,
Thank
definitely
you.
post it and I'll write it down in the paper.
Yeah.
And you know what? We've already been talking about this so much, but I put down like good friends are such good resources when tragedy strikes. And then you already mentioned church leaders for emotional comfort. But also too, I felt like sorry, now I'm gonna bring up like, but what about just the basics of like, what about reading our scriptures and seeing what Christ has to say about it, and and knowing all that Christ went through, and remembering like the atonement of Christ and everything that He did, and His atonement, He carries our burden, and so I feel like He's our greatest resource. And but I do like the website because
I like the website too, and I really like what you said, because about 4 years ago, my husband and I actually went through a separation, and I've never experienced the loss that you have, which I'm really sorry for, but it was like a different kind of loss for me, and I didn't have that kind of I didn't want to talk to much people about it. It's not that I didn't want to ask for help, but what I really did, because I didn't turn to people, I really turned to my Heavenly Father. And I understand what you say, Cindy, about feeling Him near me and having the Spirit comfort me. And so definitely all those gospel basics are so important to draw from. Yeah. And, like I said, for me, I wasn't one who wanted to talk about it to other people. If they asked, I spoke up too, but I didn't offer the conversation as like, hey, come talk to me about this. So
you didn't go around with a sign on your head?
I didn't. But I felt, and we were separated for about 3 years. I mean, we reunited after 3 years, but it was a really tough 3 years. And like I said, especially like being members of the church and everything too, it was really, really difficult. But I really talked to Heavenly Father, and I felt a lot of peace. Yeah. Thank you for mentioning that the power of prayer, scripture reading, carrying out your calling, going to the temple, all those are just that is the foundation.
I think another good resource that I've just been kind of thinking about is having the missionaries come into your home. Like if that family were to have the missionaries there teaching the plan of salvation, like how powerful would that be?
Yeah.
It brings it.
Good idea.
Yeah, I think what's really important, we all have our own problems, whether it's the loss of a baby or it's a marriage or it's sickness or other family issues. I mean, we all, I think we just all need to have, I'm going to get teary-eyed, sorry, empathy for everyone. I haven't had that same situation as Sarah. I think that sounds like the most difficult thing to go through. I don't even know what I would do without my husband for 3 years. I've been married to him for 30 years. I don't even know. And, but I think you may not know exactly what the person's going through, but I think empathy is a very important resource that people should have.
Mm-hmm. Definitely. Yeah. I like that. Is there any other suggestions or recommendations?
I had on my list just counseling for the family and for the parents as for their marriage and stuff. That's what I added to mine.
That's a good one.
I had a grief or like a group so that other people or other families that have gone through the same thing, they'll be able to talk to them and share their experiences.
Definitely support groups. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, that's wonderful.
Or if all else fails, just take a BYUI class, right?
Yep. That works too.
Yeah. Awesome. Is there any more questions or?
That's it.
Kayla, if it's helpful, I'll just mail my whole thing to you. If that.
Can we just put our name on it?
No. Yeah, and I mean, no. I mean, just so you know, I mean, if it's helpful, I'll just email it to you. And
you can if you want. I mean, I have a lot of.
Or do you feel like you have it all? Okay.
Yeah, so I have a lot. I mean, if you just want to do your summary, I mean.
You want the summary? Okay.
Yeah, I'll do the summary.
I'll probably just email you the whole thing, and you can do whatever you want.
Fair enough. I might just write my name on that one then, right?
Okay. Yeah.
I wouldn't, I promise.
All right, and then do you have our names, or do you need our names for the people?
Let me read out the names that I have, and then just making sure, you know, if I added anybody or subtracted. So I have Sarah Chandler, Cindy Taylor, Colleen Hartman, McKeely Willis, Gabby Alvaredo. Oh, I'm so sorry if I botched those. Emily Bro.
Hey, you said it right the first time, bro.
Yeah.
That never happens.
I was sweating there.
Good job.
And then obviously my name, Kayla Pendlebury. So.
Okay.
Awesome. I got everybody?
Yes.
Cool.
Okay. Thank you.
Awesome. So I'm going to wait for my computer to update, you know. And then